Resilience. According to business leaders, their organizations are not prepared to react quickly to future shocks. Locally in Brazil and globally, leaders emphasize that investing in increasing speed is a top priority on their agendas. McKinsey recently interviewed 2,500 of leaders around the world to identify macro trends and understand how to act on them. The result is the Global Study State of Organizations 2023. To also highlight local trends, we conducted a similar study in Brazil with 350 executives from 14 different industries to compare the local and global landscapes. These trends and what is needed to move forward are the topics of today's McKinsey Talks. So welcome, I'm Mariana Almeida, and here with me at the McKinsey studio in São Paulo is Patrick Simon. He's a senior partner in Berlin, global leader of organization design, and has helped numerous companies through multi-year organizational transformations. Monique Araujo is also our guest today. She's an associate partner in Rio de Janeiro, one of the leaders of our people and organization practice with vast experience helping companies. So welcome, Patrick and Monique. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Mariana. It's a pleasure.
Let me remind you that McKinsey Talks is a series of video and podcast interviews of around 20 minutes with McKinsey experts and guests from different industries. Our aim here is to initiate conversations on relevant topics for business agendas. So let's move on with our conversation. Let's begin by talking about the findings of the study. Patrick, I mentioned in the beginning that resilience is a top priority for leaders. Why is it the trend of the moment?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about resilience. And let me also tell you a little bit about the research we've done and how it came about. So a year ago, we came together as a leadership group, and we shared an observation that CEOs and CHROs and other members of the C-suite coming out of COVID had started to ask some truly foundational questions around how to create an organization that will thrive over the next 10 to 15 years, around how to deal with major external trends such as sustainability, digitization, AI, and a new generation of talent coming in that, has some different priorities and preferences. And all of that accumulated into a big question of what is going out on there in the world of organization? What are the big shifts and trends that are impacting organizations? So we decided to do this piece of research. As you said, talk to 2,500 business leaders around the world, really ask them about their priorities and marry that with our own insights and foresight. And as you said, there were two trends that came up as the two main ones. The first one was around speed and through speed, strengthening resilience. Resilience being the capability of thriving in a world that is shaped by uncertainty, by volatility, by a sense of ambiguity, as we've seen over the past 3 years with just a bunch of black swan events coming in. And being able to create resilience by being fast, by being speedy in the sense of being able to react and adapt to unforeseen circumstances. Essentially, reducing the time you pick up a signal in the market, that signal travels through the decision maker in an organization, that decision maker takes a decision, and then that decision travels back to the front line, just getting better at that. That was the one big trend that came up. And I think it's pretty logical because the world has changed, it's become faster, circumstances are changing in a faster way than ever before, and companies need to be able to adapt to that. I do want to mention the second trend that came up, the second biggest shift, which is around talent. So the C-suite around the world told us very consistently that in order to thrive in an unforeseeable world, you need to invest into talent and really make people a priority. So that's another big shift that came up in the research.
Great, thank you very much. Monique, do you recognize the same trends here in Brazil, or do you see many differences?
Yeah, the main trend in Brazil was the same. It was resilience and speed, increasing speed through resilience. And the interesting piece here is that despite being the main trend, the leaders think their organizations are not prepared. Just 1/3 of the leaders said that their organizations are well prepared for external disruptions. And when we asked, what are you doing to be more prepared? Two things came up, mainly the adaptation of agile working models and also incorporating resilience into the culture of the company.
And this is curious because when we did our CEO Excellence McKinsey Talks here with Vic when he came here, and he said the resilience are more used to different scenarios because we had inflations and so many things going on all the way. And even here in Brazil, you see this trend. They don't feel, they are recognized, they're more faster and etc., but they don't feel like this.
Exactly. It's like 65% of the leaders consider this the main trend, the most important trend, but the organizations are not there yet.
Okay, great. And Patrick, how can companies take action on this topic? How can they increase resilience and respond to this trend that we identified?
Yeah, and so at the center of becoming more resilient is becoming faster and increasing speed. In order to get there, organizations need to reorganize from a pretty static structure and process landscape to a more agile setup. So in a sense, it's about unstructuring part of the hierarchies and the bureaucracy that have been built up. I work with many organizations that still have 12, 15 hierarchy levels. Often it's a good idea to reduce that to, say, a handful, maybe 5 to 10, which will typically increase the speed at which decisions travel. With respect to processes, it's a lot about handing back judgment and empowerment to the people. So instead of running on hundreds of pages of process landscapes and role descriptions, trust the people again. With trust, most organizations will notice that there's better speed, there's more effectiveness, and people can actually make amazing decisions. And then lastly, it's all around capabilities and making sure that people are equipped with the tools and the system and the ability to act against new trends such as sustainability, digitalization, and AI.
Great. And Patrick, what are other key insights from the global survey you can highlight?
Sure, happy to. So there's 10 shifts that we identified. I'll try to pick 3 of them. One of the most prominent ones that came up is what we called the capability chasm, essentially describing the gap between the capabilities that organizations need to be successful in the future and the capabilities they currently have. And we asked our survey participants whether they feel prepared, and only 5% said we actually have the capabilities we need in the future. And we see it in the strategies that are being crafted nowadays, strategies that, for example, I've helped craft, right? They're often built on capabilities that are currently not there in the right quantity and in the right quality. If we think about advanced analytics, if we think about digitization, AI has been a very prominent example, or sustainability, some of the strategic imperatives of our time, the capabilities are not there yet. So organizations need to build that. And they need to build it by acquiring new talent in the marketplace, but also by training people and investing into their own people. There was one key shift that came up. A second one is around what we call new roles of attraction and retention. If you want to acquire the best talent, you need to be very clear about what is the purpose and the meaningfulness in your work that you want to offer to the new generation. What we see in Generation Z, which is an amazing generation, they do want all the old stuff around good compensation and work-life balance, but they also want to work for a purpose. They are looking for a deeper meaning in their lives. And we see that organizations who do well in crafting that purpose are on the right track. And I think a lot of people also in the older generations during COVID, they went through a phase of asking themselves, am I doing the right thing in my life? So we saw this whole phase of attrition, people leaving their jobs and endeavoring into new situations. And I think we see that amplified after COVID, especially in the younger generations. Organizations that have a clear purpose are winning the war for talent. Last very fast trend, I won't talk too much about it because it's everywhere. It's around AI. There's many aspects to talk about if we think about AI. I think one of the interesting ones is if we think about HR leaders, CHROs, in the future, they will need to be able to lead human capability, but they will also need to lead human capability that is augmented by AI. So in a sense, CHROs will need to move closer to what is possible through AI capabilities. I don't think they should become chief technology officers, but they need to be more aware of what's out there and what's possible.
Yeah, just one comment on the capability gap. Globally, we find 5% are prepared, and in Brazil, it's 3%.
That's interesting. Why is that? What do you think this trend?
We are far from getting there and having our organizations prepared and having the right capabilities to move to the organization of the future. So we are designing strategies, but we are not cascading what we really need on the organization to move this company to there.
And I imagine here in Brazil is also about technology, AI, these kind of things.
Exactly. All those functions, the digital functions, we see a large gap on them.
And Monique, we mentioned attraction and retention is an important topic for Brazilian organization as well, as Patrick was saying, globally. Is there anything new you would like to highlight from this recent research in this topic?
Yeah, actually, it's the second trend for Brazil as well. So it keeps on the top of our priorities. And what we saw is that there is a difference on what the talents are looking for in Brazil versus what they are looking for globally. So in Brazil, they are looking for career development and work environment as ways to improve their work experience. And globally, it's much more regarding work-life balance and compensation package. So that's the difference that we saw. And despite being like one of the topics that the talents are looking for, the career development, we don't see many organizations moving on that direction and rethinking their career plan. So only 39% of the organizations in Brazil are doing that.
So this is a key thing to be done.
Yes, exactly.
I would like to take this opportunity to remind our audience about a previous episode of McKinsey Talks on this topic, where we discuss how to move from the Great Resignation to the Great Attraction. Use the QR code on your screen or the link in the description of the session to find it. Patrick, among so many trends, can organizations act on them all at the same time?
I think it's important to prioritize. And the key questions I typically discuss with CEOs is, what are the main organizational attributes you need to get right to enable your strategy? And often that's maybe 3 or 4 things. For some, it's efficiency and it's cost leadership and creating an organization that's, super lean. For others, it's an organization that's super fast and agile. For others, it's an organization that's super digital, right? So I think it's important to pick the right trends and then prioritize and take action against these. There are some organizations, I'll be honest here, that are, they're falling behind and they need to deal with a lot of phenomena that they need to heal and get better at. So for some of them, it's probably a bit more, but typically I would say that kind of the 3 to 4 main attributes really are decisive.
And Monique, going back a little bit to the beginning of this conversation, among the 10 trends that we talked about over this episode, what are the main differences between the global scenario and the Brazilian context?
What we saw, Mari, was that on the 10 shifts that we mapped for global, we had mental health as one of the key shifts. In Brazil, mental health doesn't appear, but we saw culture and organizational health as one of the 10 shifts for Brazil, one of the 10 trends. And here we are still working on how to manage this new culture that has suffered on the last years with the pandemic and change on the working models and the arrival of the new generation. So it's not something that we have already resolved here in Brazil. We need more exercise. Organizations are still working on that and didn't actually solve this question.
That's interesting. And Patrick, what do you see? The hybrid work is something more relevant there than here. What do you see that is different?
Yeah, so hybrid work, what we call true hybrid, which is an effective mix of remote and in-person, did come up as a top trend, a top shift in the global survey we did. I think it scored a lot lower in the Brazilian context.
Yes.
And it's a topic that many organizations are trying to get right. We see that especially younger talent is looking for hybrid work opportunities. Those that can work remotely appreciate doing so a day or 2 a week to spend a bit more time with family, maybe take care of children, come to a different sense of work-life balance. We actually see that 4 out of 5 people that have experienced hybrid don't want to go back to the old model. At the same time, we see a lot of organizations, they're struggling with the concept. They want people to come back on site. And often when I talk to people in the C-suite and we go a bit deeper, the reason why that's the case is because it's hard for them to measure output of people. So instead, we resort to an input measure, which is the time you're present on site. So a lot of organizations are now trying to become sharper about what's the output we want to measure. And through that, becoming more comfortable with people being away at home, a day or 2 days a week.
And how about culture? Monique was mentioning culture here in Brazil. Is more difficult to work with culture when people are working remotely?
I think it's in a purely remote setting, you have to invest into culture. We actually have a beacon organization in our set, GitLab. They are 100% remote. They have a wonderful culture. So it's possible to do it, but they were a remote first organization. They never had offices. So they've been in a remote setting from the get-go. I do think for leaders in hybrid settings, it is important to overinvest into connectivity, to overinvest into apprenticeship, and to create workplaces that are meaningful for people to come together, to meet, to exchange, to communicate, so you don't lose that cultural thread you have in the organization.
Great. And that means that the organization need to prepare these leaders to that. So what happened during the pandemic is that they were not prepared and then try to make their best at that situation. But now, if this is something that's coming to stay, we need to invest on the preparation of these leaders to manage these hybrid teams.
And it goes back to another number that we got through our survey. Only 25% of the people we interviewed actually said that leadership in their organization is self-aware and inspiring. So there's a real crisis of inspirational leadership. Sometimes I think it's unfair because leaders really had to work through some adverse circumstances over the past years. But it's a bit harder to be an inspirational leader through a remote setting, right?
Yeah.
So I think over-investing in connectivity and apprenticeship into people is key over the next years.
And the level of preparation in Brazil is the same, just 25%.
Patrick and Monique, before we close, what is the final message you would like to leave today? So if you can start first.
Yeah, let me touch on one aspect we've not talked about yet. In the report, we celebrate the achievements of 8 beacon organizations. And if I look across them, there's really 3 properties that come to mind. The first one is they all have an external orientation towards a North Star that they're working towards. Often that's the consumer and customer. And I love how these organizations wake up in the morning and they think about how to help the consumer and customer. It's deeply ingrained in their DNA and the way they're set up. The second one, and almost equally important, is employee centricity. They're all people companies. They love their people and they work for them and they're trying to create something that's meaningful to the people. And that allows them to attract the best talent. And the third one is they're all very purpose-driven. So they have a deeper sense of what they want to achieve. And that gives the entire organization meaning and direction. So in terms of kind of a last comment, those 3 things, consumer centricity, external North Star, employee centricity, and having a deep purpose really creates amazing organizations.
Great. And you mentioned 8 companies. Do you have any curious or great stories that you would like to share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let me maybe take there's 3 consumer companies, and they're Mars, Lego, and Decathlon. And talking to these companies, again, I think it's very inspiring about how they identify with the consumer and the customer. And they have great missions, be it Mars, for example, the whole mission of pet care and taking care of pets in a very holistic way. And Lego inspiring the builders of tomorrow. And just this whole passion that unfolds around the consumer and customer. I think it's very infectious.
Great stories. And Monique, how about you? What's your final message?
I want to recap the 3 main trends for Brazil. So we are talking about speed and resilience. We are talking about talent attraction and retention. And the third one is efficiency. So working simultaneously on these 3 trends is working on our engine and heart from the organization. So it's only possible when we have the top leadership completely on top of it and leading this transformation. So nowadays, it's not more whether to transform or not. The question is whether you will be a front runner or you will be a follower.
Great. And how to prioritize
Exactly.
these things. Right.
Exactly.
So thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here today. And
Thanks for
Patrick,
having us.
I hope you enjoy your time here in Brazil.
Absolutely. As you know, Germans are fascinated by Brazil, and I will never say no to an invitation to come to Brazil.
That's great. So we expect you back here.
Very happy to do so.
Great. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you, Mariana. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for being here with us in this conversation. Do you want to know more about the topic or contact our experts? Email us at mckinsey-talks@mckinsey.com. You can also check out this episode and previous ones visiting our website. The link is in the description of the session. And take the opportunity to answer our survey about how much you like this content and any other suggestions you would like to share with us. Thank you very much and see you soon.